Hello, and welcome to Christopher Columbus and the Nina and the Pinta. Today we're going to take a tour of these two magnificent ships that are replicas of the original ships used by Christopher Columbus back in 1492. Now, as we know, in 1492, under the authority of the Spanish crown, Columbus set off with his three ships, the Nina, the Pinta, and obviously the Santa Maria, to find a way to get from the Old World to the East Indies. Now, as we know, he did not find the East Indies, but instead actually found the West Indies. Now, when you think about shipping then and you think about shipping today, the ships have come a long way in terms of how they get from one location to another. Well, thanks to the Columbus Foundation out of the British Virgin Islands, they spent almost 15 years doing research trying to find out what these ships looked like and how to actually build two of the three ships. Here is the ship manifest for all three ships from the Santa Maria. As you can see, Christopher Columbus is listed as the admiral, and Juan de la Cosa is the owner and master. And then there are the three ships, the Pinta and the Nina as well. This here is the flag of the Crown King of Spain, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, the two that financed Columbus's tour to the East Indies, if you want to call it a tour. So in 1492, he took off on his initial tour. From there, all the way through 1504, Columbus made three more journeys, all from Spain and Portugal, into the West Indies of Hispaniola and Cuba and Jamaica, South America, and Central America. Here's a little bit cleaner version so you can actually see his route that he took in 1492. His first stop obviously is there on the Canary Islands, which is off the coast of Africa. From there he hit the Bahamas, Hispaniola, which is Haiti and the Dominican Republic, and then came back all the way to Spain. From 1493 to 1496, he spent a lot more time going from island to island, location to location. In fact, when I lived in Cuba back in 1992, I actually was in the port, and they have a brass plate that marks where Christopher Columbus landed back in 1493, which I thought was actually really, really cool. Here's his third voyage from 1498 to 1500. Spent a little bit more time down in the Lesser Antilles, which would be where Trinidad, Tobago, Guadalupe, and Dominica are. And then his fourth voyage from 1502 to 1504. And as you can see, he spent more time going from the islands almost in a circle through Central America, down through Panama, and back up into Jamaica before finally going back to Spain, pretty much at that point a desolate man. And here are the replica ships built to scale, the Pinta and the Nina. And these actually came into port in Wilmington, North Carolina, which gave us a great opportunity to go and really see how ships operated 425 years ago. As you can see, they are mast ships, meaning they have sails, and they have no motors whatsoever. Here's the Pinta. The Pinta is actually a Caravel Redonda sailing ship, which was designed back in the early 1400s as a way to create a ship that was easier to maneuver and could get from port to port a lot faster. Now, the one who came up with this idea is actually Prince Henry, the Navigator. He was called the Navigator because he had this affinity for sailing and ships. And one thing he needed was, as you can read the thing, it says Henry wanted to stop the pirate attacks, but the ships that sailed the Mediterranean at the time were too slow and too heavy. So under his direction, that's where they came up with the Caravel. And in 1477, Columbus actually was living in Lisbon, Portugal at the time, learning more wayfaring ways to become a skilled pilot and captain of his own ship. Here's the crew of the Pinta. There were 26 members who actually served on this ship during Columbus's time. And the Pinta actually made one trip and then it disappeared, and no one's too sure what happened to it after its first voyage. And currently it runs on a crew of 6 to 8 people. Either we've gotten really good at ship sailing, or we just have some really well-dedicated individuals. Now, with that, they actually made the Pinta the Nina a little bit bigger, by 15 feet and 6 foot wider. Now, they used the exact same trades to build it, all by hand tools. They used no machines whatsoever. And, I mean, it took them 32 months to build this ship, but they did it in terms of making it wider so that they could actually have more passengers on there. And here it is, under construction in Brazil by 8th generation Portuguese shipbuilders. And as you can tell, it's a little bit further along the lines as it's being made, but it is a great pictures as provided by the Columbus Foundation. And here we can see the back aft end of the Pinta as we're walking in, and on the right there you can see the rudder. There we go. Couldn't think of the word for a second. There's the rudder that they use to steer the ship. Now, obviously, back in 1492, they didn't have boats hanging off the back end like they do now, or the noted fire extinguisher in the window, if you want to call it that. But due to present maritime law, that's a requirement. And there you can see the flag of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella flying on the center mast. And here is the crew of the Nina, which only had 24 members, so it was just a couple sailors less than what was on the Pinta. The Nina was also built down in Brazil by the same artisans. Now, here is a picture of information that they actually provided on the ship that shows some of the instruments that the sailors used to navigate the oceans, from star navigators to sextants to compasses. And of course, during the day you have the sun to see as far as the ocean will allow you to see, but at night, that there would be your only light. Now, here's a good comparison of how much navigation has changed. On the left is the actual compass they have on the ship nowadays, and on the right is a 15th century compass that would have been used on a caravel. Now, here's a traverse board, which aided in the direction and speed over a set period of time, which is what the watch officer would use, and mark the position every 30 minutes, utilizing the ropes, which you can see tied onto it. They didn't have GPS back then, which made it real simple for them to find their way. They used stars and boards and a lot of prayers. And here it talks a little bit more about the traverse board. And here's a quadrant, which is very much like a sextant, which was used to align themselves so they knew theoretically where they were in position according to the stars. And there's a sextant. Now the hold, that's the center point of the ship, which is where they kept everything, from the people to their food, their gear, water, and animals. And here's just an idea of some of their provisions. that they would keep in those barrels, you know, from vinegar, salt, hardtack, which is a form of a biscuit, sugar, rice, and jams. And up on the upper left hand, that is the hold looking down, but we were not allowed down there because that's where the modern crew actually stays. And on the right, you can see where all the rope is. That's the covering that goes over the hold. And here is just a sign. We really couldn't get down there, like I said, into the hold, but the captain's quarters, they didn't have a whole lot of space. And this is where Columbus would have been, because in December of 1492, the Santa Maria actually sank. And there's no record of what that ship truly looked like other than based off rough draft ideas. Lift lines and halyard lines, which control the yard, which the yard is the top part of the mast that goes across, and you can see the roll bins that control it to go up and down and left and right. Here's how the center mast is, how they keep it in its position. They just hammer in those things, oil them in, and they're stuck. Now, the tiller, that's what they called the rudder that they used. Now, I'm sure a lot of you like the Pirates of the Caribbean, where they show them using an actual wheel. They have no wheel back then. They just had this long post and the rudder with the use of their sails. That's the only way they could control the ship. They didn't have a motor to turn it on or off. Just some more of the ropes and the lines that they used. And as you can see, it's all over the ship. And the shrouds, which is the ropes on the left and on the right, also help control the yard and the mainsails. Now, to be a good sailor, you have to be able to tie a multitude of knots. And as you can see, this is just an example of some of the knots one has to be able to tie. And this just shows a general makeup of how the ropes were covered for protection. Now, the big barrel on the right there with the post sticking out of it is called the windlass, which is what they used to lift the anchors up and out of the sea. And it was all done by hand. There's no motors other than your own human strength. There's an anchor on the right, and on the left there, in the center, is the wedge that actually holds the windlass from actually spinning freely. And there she is, just sitting off into the port. Now, as an avid lover of history, I thought it was a great opportunity to be able to see the Nina and the Pinta. It would have been nice if they had actually built a scale replica of the Santa Maria, which was actually a very heavy ship and a lot larger than the other two. But unfortunately, like I said, when it was lost in 1492, so went the records with it. Now, for more information on the actual Nina and the Pinta and their locations from year to year, you can go to www.thenina.com. And as those who are very interested in taking a tour, they do have tours available. So thank you and have a good day.